Let's move on to safety again. Step changes. We're talking about step changes, how you get step changes in safety. Matt, you were talking about it a lot. What is the safety record like, and what would a step change mean? Does that mean no people getting injured ever? I mean, what's a realistic improvement in safety?
Thanks for that question. Just thinking about how to answer that. I think ultimately none of us sit here and want any of our people to be injured in their work on a day-to-day basis. And tragically, we've had a number of incidents in recent times that have just brought that to the fore. If I'm honest, what I'm hopeful for is, I don't think, as I said at the beginning, doing the same old isn't going to do it. Thinking laterally gives us a chance. And what I mean by that is looking at other techniques for how we design, how we go about our works, but perhaps picking up on the technology piece, looking at how we actually deliver our works. And we know that a lot of our challenges are where we have people and plant. Well, let's not have people and plant together. Let's have more automation. Let's look at how we can, and I know there's a push to do this, to turn more of the concepts of what we're providing out in the field as product type delivery. So most of the work is done in the factory, and then we come and we just simply plonk it in place down in the field. Now, the barrier there seems again to be a little bit to how do we force that change through the system? How do we get people to take hold of an idea and actually push it through and have the determination to overcome the challenges that we know exist in terms of taking a new idea and actually getting it out in the field? And somehow I think we've got to unlock that. So I suppose ironically, that how do we improve and innovate and how do we become more safe, actually in my head are the one and the same journey, because we can't have one without the other. And for as long as we use excavators and people to dig holes in the ground and put ducts in them, then we're going to continue to hurt our people. And to me, it seems somewhat crazy that in the modern day, that's what we're still doing.
Saying this is something we've got to, and we actually looked at how many million times a year we've got people crossing the carriageway while we're trying to put signs out. So we came up against the usual barriers. Well, you've got to have these signs in the Central Reserve. So we say, go to the other side. Why do we need the signs in the Central Reserve? We jointly funded and did some work with TRL about having advanced wicket signs that automated. We then looked at, do we need them on the near side rather than offside? And we came up, and I'm really pleased that we then shared that with the industry. And this is the bit I'd point about, I think is important. Safety, and an innovation is safety, that impacts on safety should be shared across the industry, because God forbid that somebody else is doing something in a similar way that then leads to an unfortunate incident. And I'm really pleased across our organisation, it's over 3 million carriageway crossings we've now not done. And we don't do any. It's treated, if we did anything like what would be seen as a carriageway crossing, it's treated as a near miss, and it comes to me directly. So I don't get those because they don't do them. And that's where we've shared that now across the maintenance community and in our construction divisions. That's the sort of thing, I agree with Matt, that we've got to do something collectively. And I'm really impressed that safety is the number one imperative that Jim and his team talk about. And that's also overseas where we take that as well.
Malcolm, I will come to your point in a second, but you used an interesting phrase there, Dave. You said the usual barriers. What are those usual barriers?
Well, we've always done it this way, therefore we're always going to do it that way. But if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And you've got to change that. And that's where I think the collaboration comes in. You get people in a room and say, why are you doing that? I can think of one in particular that they've got a stand over there, WJ Road Markings. Don't know if you've ever seen how you actually do put a road stud. Traditionally, you'd have a corer there and you'd have a bloke in the line of traffic. They've come up with a thing called the Guardian system. I would ask people to go and have a look at it. I think it's tremendous. The guy now sits within the truck and he's never out on the open, in the open and put at risk. That's the sort of innovation we've got to start promoting, and that's where we've got to go if we're going to change and get for our ultimate aim of zero harm.
Yeah. Malcolm, you had a point.
Yeah, just to pick up exactly on what Dave just finished with zero harm. That's a fundamental principle of MPA members. And just last week, National Health and Safety Awards. And those are awards for innovation, specifically in the safety field. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it on the day. I know some of the winners are in and around the space today. But it's not awards for the sake of awards or awards for innovation. It's all led by culture change. As I said, if we always do what we always did, that's what we've got to break. We've got to make people think in a different way about how they deliver. If it comes about by a piece of technology or a process, then so be it. But you've got to change the minds first.
So it's not kind of a specific rule, it's not red tape, it's just a lot of people have always done it one way and just continue to do it that way unless you educate, I guess, and say there's a reason for changing it. That's your point.
Yeah, and it ties into other challenges in the sector. We've got an ageing workforce. Their minds are harder to change. Those coming in at the bottom end, the younger guys, have those different ways of thinking and the scope for innovation. Are we tapping into them enough? Can we find them in the first place? I know there'll be more discussions on skills later, but we've got to attack that at both ends. Change the culture, but use the experience to drive the innovation from the newcomers to the sector.
David, I'm interested from a Highways England's perspective. If someone out here, for example, has this sort of fantastic product that could improve safety, but it doesn't fit in with the sets of standards that we've got here at the moment, how easy is it to come to you guys to say, have you seen this, to get standards changed, to actually get a new physical product into so that you guys are recommending it or using it?
I think, back to your initial question in terms of the bar, I think that zero harm absolutely has to be where we set the bar. We all come to work, or whether we've done today, and we expect to go home tonight, as should everybody who's working out there within the sector and broader. You know, so to me, we couldn't say, well, we're happy with this statistic or that statistic. It's not. It's actually that zero harm. I think that's critical. I think a few things that have been really touched on. I think that behavioural element of it is absolutely critical, and I think as kind of leaders, we've got to think, what is it that creates that culture? Because at the end of it, there's somebody out there doing a job. You know, I'm an engineer, I've been on site. One of the things that perhaps made me an half-decent engineer is that I knew how to get things done and how to solve problems. Well, some of that means you may be departing from working methods or the way you operate, and that is not a culture that we know can actually thrive and get us to that zero harm. So I think that the behavioural aspect of it, absolutely, you know, process, procedure, the drive, but that leadership and the culture and how we create that behaviour is absolutely critical. In terms of standards, I would say one of the big things through the supply chain strategy is we are trying to get closer to the suppliers where those ideas are and where they're harvested. There are a few people in here that I've had conversations with. Listen, I'm not the kind of safety specialist expert that kind of looks at all the standards, because, you know, something to me that may look a good idea on the face of it, that can be counterbalancing things. So I think there is that process. For me, it's about reducing the friction that when we do get a good idea, how quick do we get out to the wider sector so the benefit is actually felt by all? You know, not every idea can be the one that you say, well, grab it, because there are other reasons. But once we've got it, how do we make the system as frictionless as possible so it gets out to the benefit of everybody in this room and beyond?
Alan, you've talked about effectively having a structure, I guess, where the smaller companies can take more risks, can be more innovative. What's your view at the moment on how easy that is to actually do?
I think we have to look at the whole sector, obviously talking quite a bit about Highways England, but I think it's a challenge for small suppliers to get their ideas to marketplace and get them delivered. Essentially with the current or the previous contracting arrangements, in particular with Highways England, with tier one suppliers and supply chain and so forth, it made a lot those ideas that small suppliers may have a lot more inaccessible. I think one of the key things is right across the sector is to focus more on outcomes and delivery of solutions rather than inputs on how you do things. As long as you do things safely, as long as people aren't compromised, then I think opportunity should be given to suppliers to deliver bright ideas, and those ideas should be more accessible than they are at the moment. So is there a lot of red tape? Well, maybe.
Can you give us a sort of practical example of what that would mean? So what would, you're talking about what's the phrasing you used on it? Basically, it's about outcomes rather than specifically how you can do
Yes.
it. What does that literally mean? If you want to drive from London to Birmingham, you know, the outcome is that you get there in a couple of hours and you don't go through a roadworks. Is it that practical?
I mean, the outcome might be, and I think the Highways England uses this expression, a mile a minute. I mean, actually, how you deliver a mile a minute is very much up to the contractor, the supply chain to come up with those ideas. But the challenge or the outcome is about a mile a minute.
Is there a feeling amongst you guys, you might not want to say, that the Highways England has got a bit of a stranglehold over all this stuff at the moment, is a bit too controlling? You might not want to say it because it might not be that good for business, but is it a bit sort of top-heavy at the moment, like sometimes these industries can be? They've got a lot of money, they've got a lot of power at the moment. Is it sort of hard to get through to them? Malcolm?
I don't think so. I think actually Highways England, like most intelligent clients, are a listening organisation. I would say that, you know, not all of them, not everybody in Highways England listens, but that's another story. But, you know, the majority of people in Highways England, they come and learn, they want it to improve. And I think, like, as I say, the more intelligent clients, they definitely are in a listening mode and taking account.
Just add you could easily, there was a comment around Tier 1 and integrator. If you felt that that was a blocker, it's not. The role of the integrator to Highways England being successful is absolutely critical, and the role that the Tier 1 and integrator play in driving the safety agenda and making it successful is as crucial as ever. So it's not the element of all the great ideas are here. A lot of the things that I see, and obviously my job is I'm out with supply chain, a lot of the cultures that are created come from companies like Kia and others that are kind of really fostering and doing that. So it's not just quite as simple to say, you'll go here, there's a great idea, and it's being blocked. It's not like that. And the role of the integrator is still critical for us going forward. Highways England doesn't want to be on the shovel doing what it's done. That's not in our kind of business model and way of going forward. So that integrator has a critical role and adds a lot of value.
Malcolm, you have a point.
I think that might be an integrator.
Yeah,
Someone loves you.
certainly the experience expressed to me by members is that it's changing. Highways Agency in the past were maybe not as good listeners as Highways England are starting to appear to be. I know within some of the technical forums that we operate in, we've been working closely. See Andy over there is working closely with David on Pavement Efficiency Group. And allied to that, we have another platform, the UK Pavement Liaison Group, which is very much a technical-based group. Soon to be published from one of its working groups is a procedure for innovation approval. So in the past, you had to go down the departure from standards route, which took time, expense to get an innovation approved for use on site. The new process is looking to make that process more lean. It's a step-by-step guide. Even before you knock on Highways England's door, you can identify what level of acceptance you would be with the evidence you have available. So you can decide, before it goes on the network, I have to be at level 6. Currently, with the work I've done, I'm at level 3. I have to go away, do some more, get more evidence before I bother them, because it takes time for them to say no. If it's clear to you as the innovator going in, the answer will be no. Then you go back and you change what you're doing to ensure that the first answer is yes.
Okay, I won't milk it, but there's one last chance to ask a question. Ah, yes, great. We've got a couple here. Now it's going to take ages to get a microphone to you, but we'll go you first, sir, and then you. Oh, wait.
My name's Keith Dawson from a company called Highway Resource Solutions. And just listening to what you were talking about, saying how difficult it is for a small enterprise to get into Highways England or into the network, I would guess we are as small as companies go around here. Recently we came up with a concept which is innovative. It's really talking about putting an alarm on road tapers so that when a cone gets knocked over, all of a sudden now we can tell instantly that it's been knocked over and react and put it up. Because as daft as it may sound, for the last 25 years, it's acceptable for a cone to be knocked over and then be picked up on routine cyclic maintenance. So we went to Kier with an idea, and they said to us last April, we'll run some trials in Area 13, which we ran for about 6 to 8 weeks to try and prove the concept. From there, it's now progressed to doing some trials on Area 9, because it is about the most complicated network on the country. And bearing in mind, we've removed all the signs now from the central reservation, it seems only logical that we should have some kind of thing to alert the public to the fact that the tape has been knocked over. Along with that, also, it kind of I believe it will solve a problem for Highways England insofar as when that first cone is getting put out at this moment in time, it is a major bottleneck to the industry. Sometimes people trying to put cones out can repeatedly make the phone calls, and often it can lose up to 1 to 2 hours possibly of that working window on a night. So all of a sudden, from something as simplistic as putting an alarm on a taper, now we can start to look at whether we can increase productivity. From a safety point of view from the general public, as we're driving along, is it right that a taper can be splattered and then left like that for 2 hours? I don't think it is. So immediately now, what we've been doing with Kier is demonstrating that that can actually be improved upon. And I suppose finally my point is, if we are looking ahead and we start talking about cars that can read and all the rest of it, how is it going to know when there are roadworks there? So perhaps something as simplistic as this idea could be something that in 10 or 15 years' time could be the future.
So it's interesting. It sounds like you had a good experience of actually pitching an idea and getting a company to listen and getting it tested and so on.
It's not been the case throughout a lot of it, because as soon as you start to talk about, you know, that it's going to cost you maybe 5 pints of beer, that is an issue. And it's how much, you know. And also with these kind of products that we're talking about, not only do the traffic maintenance companies get alerted to the fact that tapers have been knocked down, but the workforce get alerted that the tapers have been knocked down. So all of a sudden we're starting to increase potential safety issues, we're starting to increase public experience. And then if we take it to the next step, that say, okay, do we really need to go around just looking our tapers knocked? Or do we go, when they are actually knocked, think of the fuel saving, think of the vehicle emissions, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But yes, with, in fairness to Kia, yes, with them it's been a pleasant experience.
Yes. You've done a good sell as well.
Well,
the company name. So
Thank you.
Sorry, very, very quickly, did you still have a question you wanted to ask? We've just got this chap here in the glasses. Did you put your... We've got to wind it up pretty quickly, but yeah, go for it.
My name is Ali Mirza, working for Arcadis as a transport planner. Talking about customer and then safety. So if I'm a customer, I'm paying tax, a road tax, getting on a car, coming on a motorway. When I went for my driving test, I just drove in the local authority on a 30-mile-per-hour road and passed my driving test. The next day on, I got onto a motorway and realized it's a complete different driving on a motorway. Your little mistake can create a big casualty or anything else. Are we looking into investing something to talk to government or DVLA or any relevant authorities to look into how we are getting the new drivers onto the motorways? Because that's a complete different driving, and we need to be very careful on that part.
So very quickly, I'm going to take that on about the teaching people to drive on the different roads to improve safety.
I mean, picking up on Ali's point, I think that's one of the areas that I was trying to illustrate. And going back to what Matt was saying about the human factors piece, I think as an industry, there's some really good things that we're doing, quite innovative things that we're doing in terms of physical infrastructure that we're putting in place, and it all plays its part. But I think the human behaviours element, I think it's going to happen anyway. I think, because I think technology will drive it. People, the customers' experience, whatever it is, whether it's shopping, whether it's taking a plane to go somewhere, or a train, whatever it is. But I think that the customers' experience is becoming more and more sophisticated, and it's actually being customized around the individual as opposed to a collective group of people. So I think we'll start to see that over time, but I think it's important that we as an industry should support the idea of driving that side of it, the psychology that sits behind people behavior and how everybody's different, and their experiences on the road network, whether it be a local road network or a motorway, it's different.
It's interesting. Thanks very much. I think everything we've talked about today comes down to people, doesn't it, really, and how they behave and their attitudes.